All right, the SEC has released the predictions for this year's season, and it's not surprising. We wrote about this on Dog Post. The Alabama Crimson Tide with an overwhelming, or the overwhelming pick to win the league. 158 votes for the Tide, 18 for Georgia. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about this long, but Vanderbilt got a vote. So did South Carolina got three. Texas A&M got one, which I think is a reasonable one. Georgia with 172 votes to win the East, Bama with 177 to win the West, Kentucky with four to win the East, then Tennessee. So it went Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, the Gators, Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. And of course, the Vanderbilt person voting is probably somebody who did it on purpose so they could write about somebody voting for Vanderbilt. And then the SEC West, you've got Alabama at the one, Texas A&M at the two, Arkansas, then Ole Miss, then LSU, then Mississippi State, and then Auburn. It feels wrong that LSU would be the five, but maybe that's where we're at right now. I am very curious to see. I think Texas A&M could, in theory, be overplayed here and LSU be under. But the West is such a competitive thing. You just don't know what you're getting into with the Western side of the conference. It's tougher than the East. There's no question about that. But it is what it is. Hey, make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION. I've got a new batch that's come in, and this special that I've got going is not going to last forever. It's late July, so you buy DAWGSTRUCTION today, you get our 2022 preview included with it. If you just want our preview, you're not getting the value of buying it with DAWGSTRUCTION, but the link of both of these is down below. Make sure you're picking that up today. This is your ability to get both for one price right now. This is not going to last forever. Okay, so this is the way I saw it, generally speaking, coming into media days. I will say, I think that there's a couple of inside baseball notes here. First of all, you have to keep in mind that the media has changed over the last, I would say, 7 years in the league. There's a lot more .coms that are around than used to be. A lot more. There's fewer sort of mainstream media as there has been in the past. It also seems like, and this happens in all cases, particularly I think in the sports media, which is that something is so set in stone, there's no way anything else would happen. That's totally what's going on here. No one can picture Alabama not winning the SEC this year. And I mean, I'm not as certain about that part. The other thing that this doesn't reflect is the betting odds. This is an overwhelming, if you want to call it, victory for Alabama. They are not, they are favored by our friends at FanDuel, but they are not favored by so much that it's insane. So I just we kind of get carried away. One thing does not equal the other, and I know that. But like Alabama is at minus 140 to win the SEC, and in real terms, in statistical uh, what's the word? A statistical look at it, that is not as lopsided as the way that the press has voted it for here. And I hate to do this, but I will. I always am honest with y'all. If not, I'm always very tired, like I am right now. Uh, the the folks that are voting on this, I just sometimes I question if they know anything, if they know if a football is played with a bat or not at times, and that's the folks who are voting in this poll. So if you get credentialed, um, you have the ability to vote, and a lot of times you get some curious votes. The implied probability that Alabama will win the league is about 58%. The implied probability that Georgia will win the league at plus 160 is not quite 40%. So what we saw here, though, is 158 to 18 Those are not the same thing at all. But it's just a media vote. It's not a big deal. Um, I'm not so upset that other people have voted for Georgia to win the East, for someone other than Georgia to win the East. I think you're going to have outliers. It's not 100% that the Dogs will win the East, just like it's not 100 that Bama will win the West. But to say Alabama is by with this voting, Alabama is more likely to win the West than Georgia is the East. That's not really based in reality, but it's a straight up vote. That's not what this is me projecting versus what this is. This is just a straight vote. That's it. I mean, you know, the media correctly, I was going to really lash out on this if they didn't get this right, but they correctly put in Warren McClendon as a first string All SEC guy. That was something that, if that didn't happen, that would be real negligence on the part of people who are there attending the event, and it would just show the lack of um, I don't know. Everybody also got right that Tank Bigsby is a first string guy. Um, sometimes people really miss that. I mean, Tank is the best running back in the league right now. If if there's one guy I think that can change that, and that's Kendall Milton. And now Kendall was not in the top. He's not considered in the top six running backs in this league. Jamar Gibbs, the transfer from Georgia Tech, Tank Bigsby. You also have Zach Evans. You may or may not remember that name. He was a third team guy. Kenny McIntosh, also third team. Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky, who is a very good running back. I'm not sure I would put him in front of Kendall Milton. I'm going to say Chris Milton. I think Kendall has the capability to be right there with Tank Bigsby this year, but we will see. You had a 1-2-3, which is not shocking. You had a 1-2-3 of Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker, and then Will Levis as your quarterbacks. No Anthony Richardson, and then also no Stetson Bennett. So that none of these things are surprising. But again, when you look at statistically speaking, who is the better quarterback? Stetson is certainly better than Will Levis. Is he better than Hendon Hooker? Not quite statistically, but when you play the two head to head, I mean, Stetson had the better night, but he wasn't going up against Georgia's defense. So there's all sorts of things that people get into with this stuff. I think it is a barometer of where we're at. I don't think it means much more than that. It is a placeholder. It is something that we do and have done since I think '92. And the media's gotten it right 9 times. I will say it is hard to pick the winner of conferences. The default setting should be Alabama, but this poll has gotten it right exactly 9 times in the last 30 years. So 1 in 3. And I will read you some of the most egregious mistakes as I get to it. There was some sort of whack job moments in the past. I would say, first of all, Alabama was picked to win it in 2000. They finished fifth or last place. They finished tied for fifth, last place in the West. Tennessee was picked this is to win the league. Tennessee was picked to win the league. They finished fifth in the East in 2005. Alabama, which was probably not a horrible pick in 2010, coming off a national championship, they were picked to finish fourth. Excuse me, to win the conference, they finished fourth. The most egregious one, period, was Auburn being picked in 2015. They finished seventh in the West. That Auburn team lost to Mark Richt's Georgia team in a game that was pretty like a tug of war, but it was a completely irrelevant game. So, Georgia's only been picked to win the conference once in the last 20 years. They've won it 3 times in that time. So this is just a barometer. It doesn't mean everybody who voted in it is an idiot. It certainly doesn't mean that it's irrelevant as it relates to what the future holds. I do think for sure everybody's got it right that it's going to be Alabama and Georgia. It would be surprising if one of the two of them is not there. I think the better question may be, are you going to see two 12-0 teams? We did not see that a season ago. That was discussed. There was all this. But Georgia had Clemson coming into the season. They were a legitimate underdog in that game. That's the last time they were an underdog. They were not an underdog in Atlanta. They were not an underdog in Indianapolis. So this season, with those two teams, there's no obvious upset. With that said, Georgia opens with Oregon. They have a stretch at the end that's tough, including a trip to Kentucky, who's voted second place in this thing. Alabama still has to deal with the West. And, when you look back at their games last year, there were 4 times in their run to Atlanta, the game with the Gators, the Auburn game, obviously, the LSU game, and then they lost to Texas A&M, where they did not play well. Like, they could have lost probably 3 of those 4 games. I do not think they could have lost to the Gators. They just didn't really play well. So they won that game by 2. So I say they couldn't have lost. They could have lost, I guess, but you get my point. So this is a barometer. We'll see what happens. Anyway, hey, make sure you're checking us out over on Instagram, etc., everywhere. TikTok as well. But if you're not picking up on this, the time is running out. That deal I got with DAWGSTRUCTION is not going to last forever. Take advantage now.